Hi friends, it's Taylor. Welcome back to the channel where I share my financial journey using Monarch money. Today I'll be sharing the highly requested tutorial on how to create the 50-30-20 budget setup in Monarch. Although I'm using a specific budget structure in this video, you can use the same steps to create the setup of your choice. Alright, let's get started with the tutorial. First, I'm going to go to Settings and then Categories. I'm using the Monarch Money demo account, which means that all of these are the default categories for when you first set up your account. If you've already customized some categories and moved things around, no worries, these steps will still work for you. So we're going to start with the income section here at the top. All of these categories look pretty basic enough to me, so we're going to leave that as is. Next is the expenses section down here, which is where the bulk of the setup happens. We are going to click the button Create Group next to the expenses header, and we are going to create two different groups. The first one will be Needs, and in parentheses we'll put 50%, and then click Save. And then we'll also create another one called Wants, and in parentheses that'll be 30%, and also click Save. You're probably wondering where the third group of savings, which is your remaining 20%, comes in, and Monarch actually already has a built-in savings category, which is technically under here in the transfer section. But we will talk about that more once we head over to the budget page. And quick side note, I actually have a third category here called Wealth in my personal budget. I like to reserve this section for things that are specifically building my wealth, such as loan payments, extra debt payments, etc. But for the sake of this video, so that we can keep things as simple as possible, I'm going to leave this out. Now that we have the needs and wants budget groups created, we're going to go through the categories one by one and move them into their relevant groups. So I'm going to scroll to the top of the list here and let's start moving things around. So let's say we consider charity to be wants and gifts as well. So we'll move both of those to the wants group and click Save. And you can see that this section is now empty. So since we don't need this anymore, we're going to click Edit and then Delete. And quick tip, if you want to save yourself some time and bulk move all of the categories, you can go to the budget group and click Edit. And then once you click Delete, it will give you the option to move all of the categories within it to the group of your choice. All right, I took some time off screen to move these categories around, and I also disabled a couple because I want to keep this budget as simple as possible for this video. And you'll see that we have all of our categories under the needs group, and then the rest of them under the wants group. Now we're going to head to the budget page and we're going to talk about the built-in savings group in Monarch. If you scroll down to the bottom of the budget page, you'll see this section called Contributions, and then right under that is this section called Goals. These goals are going to be your savings goals, which you will need to create if you want them to show up on the budget page. I do have a full video on how to create goals in Monarch, so we're going to kind of breeze through this for the sake of the video. So I'm going to head to Goals, click Get Started, and we're going to use this bottom right one just for the sake of having a general one. And we're going to click the plus icon so that we can have two savings goals that we're going to create at the same time. Scroll down and click Next, and the two that I'm going to create are Emergency Fund and Vacations. And then I'll click Save, then I'll click Next, and we'll put in the amounts that we want to save. So let's say I want to save $1,000 for my emergency fund and $1,000 for my vacations. And I'm going to skip adding accounts for now and click Next, and also click Next again. And now we see both of these goals are created. So I'm going to head back to the budget page and scroll down to the bottom, and now we have these two savings goals on our budget so that we can allocate the money that we need to for these goals. Now that we have all of our categories set up here on the budget page, we are going to add the desired amounts that we want to either spend or save into each category. It's best if you already have these amounts beforehand so that you can just go ahead and plug them in. Now, since I'm using the demo account and there are already some transactions going on down here at the bottom, I am just going to set some random budget amounts for these categories based on what's been spent so far. So let's say we have $1,000 total in our utilities, and for groceries, we'll put that at 500, and I'm hitting the tab key to jump between categories quickly. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the wants group. So let's say we want to put 100 to giving, and then for fund money, let's say 50, and miscellaneous, we'll do another 50. Now we can see that our left to budget in the top right corner is going to be the amount of money that we need to assign somewhere. I adjusted the income here to make this number a little bit more realistic, so to speak. So I'm going to scroll down, and now we are going to decide how we want to split up this $1,005 into the goals of our choice. So since we want to prioritize the emergency fund, let's say that we put 700 here. And then for the vacations, we will put the remaining 305 there. And now we have a zero-based budget because we have taken our total income, subtracted our expenses, and assigned the rest of it to our goals, aka our savings. And as the month goes on, you will categorize these transactions into the categories of your choice by going to the transactions page, and you can adjust the groups here. So let's say that this Wells Fargo transaction here is actually not rent. Let's say that it is actually a loan payment. And now that this is adjusted here, you would go to the budget and adjust your loan budgeted amount here, and maybe adjust your rent as needed. Now, as your spending gets tracked throughout the month on the budget page, you can use this page to review your spending in two ways. You can leave the budget amounts as is so you can see exactly where you overspent and by how much, or you can adjust the budget to match your actual spending so you have a more zero-based budget and can see where your money is going. For example, let's say that you only plan to spend $100 on restaurants this month, but you actually ended up spending $216. If you leave the budget amounts as is, you can clearly see that you budgeted $100, spent $216, and you went over budget by $116. This is going to be helpful if you specifically want to see areas that you are constantly overspending and you want those to stand out and come to your attention a little bit more, so that way when you create your budget for the future, you can be more mindful of it or adjust your budget amounts as necessary. Now, the downside of using this method is that it makes it seem like you have more money left to budget in the top right. So for example, if you're not paying attention to your overspending, you'll think that you have $150 left to spend, and maybe you decide to take that $150 and put it to the fund money category. And now, even though this is showing that this is a zero-based budget in the top right, it's not accurate because you overspent in some categories. And if you continue to overspend and not really pay attention to your spending, you could end up assigning more money and therefore spending more money than you actually have, which is why I suggest doing the zero-based budget method, where at the end of the month when you are doing your budget closeout, you make the budgeted amounts match up with the actual. So in this case, I would put $216 for restaurants, and let's say I didn't give anything this month, and fund money was $41, shopping $393, and then $40, and then $40. So as you can see, these categories now have zeros next to each of them, and this is what we would call reconciling your transactions, and therefore making sure that your budgeted amounts match up with your actual. And when you do this every month or at the end of every pay period, whatever works for you, you can have more accurate information in the top right about how much you actually have left to budget. And now this makes more sense because you did not spend all the money that you thought you would for restaurants, for example. So that goes up into the placeholder in the top right, and you can decide, hey, since I didn't spend that extra money on restaurants, let me put that towards savings this month, and I'll increase the vacations fund by $160. and that gives us $465. I have a full video on zero-based budgeting in Monarch, so be sure to check that out for more information, or you can leave any of your questions below. And lastly, once your spending is done for the month and you're doing your budget closeout, you can head over to the cash flow tab so you can see the actual percentages of your spending. For the simplest view of those percentages, I recommend coming over here to the view type and changing it to Sankey diagram, and then changing the filter from category to group. And if you scroll down, you can see those exact percentages and how it aligns with the 50-30-20 budget. And as you can see, we have those three groups now, the built-in savings category for Monarch, along with the two groups that we created, needs and wants. And since we are using the 50-30-20 budget in this video, we can compare our percentages to see if we're on track or if we should make some adjustments. Maybe the 50-30-20 budget isn't working for you, and you can try something like the 70-20-10 budget. I will also point out that you can do the Sankey diagram by category or by both, which does get a little bit confusing if you are not really sure how to read the data, but you do definitely have a lot of options here if you want to see how your spending is matching up with your goals. So that's it for this simple tutorial on how to set up the 50-30-20 budget in Monarch. Again, you can use these steps to set up whatever structure you like, but if you have any questions, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.